Hello. It's week 24 of 5225, 52 weeks of loving movies. And this week I am covering some blind spots, movies that I had never seen before that I should have seen by now. Um, First thing, let's just get it out of the way here. There's something wrong with my camera. This is not a clever, if it could be called that, tie into the theme. It's just my camera's not working, so you're not going to be able to see me, except you'll be able to look at this wonderful picture of me exercising my right to bear arms. But other than that, you're not going to be able to see me. So let's go in blind and fill some of those blind spots. Now, this episode's probably going to be a little short. I know I said that before, but and it hasn't worked out. But this one's going to kind of have to be because I had mentioned it on the last episode that I wasn't sure how much time I was going to have to watch some of these movies, and I was right. I only had a chance to watch two, and one of them was unintentional. I'll get to that, but let's just dive in with the first movie, which was The Red Shoes from 1948, directed by Michael Powell and Emmerich Passberger. Now, this one is one that had been on my radar for a long time, and it's funny because I actually had avoided this movie for a long time for a really kind of funny reason, and that is because back in the early 90s, when I was but a kid, there was a anthology series on Showtime called The Red Shoe Diaries, or just Red Shoe Diaries. I'm not sure if there was and it was an erotic anthology series that similar to what you would find on like Cinemax and stuff like that late at night. It was on Showtime, and I had not heard of this movie, The Red Shoes, before. So when I first heard about it, I thought it was somehow related to that. And so for some reason, it was just in the back of my mind, like, oh, that's just Cinemax stuff. That's Skinemax. It's not, it's not going to be maybe worth my time. But then as, I got older and kind of learned more about film, I was like, oh, this is considered one of the greats. And so then it went on my list. It just taken me a very, very long time to actually finally get to it. You have a good excuse to watch it. Not that anybody ever needs an excuse to watch a film. I finally watched it. And let me just say, for the first 10 minutes of this movie, I was not sure if this was going to be a film for me. And I can't explain exactly why. It's just, as I'm watching it, it's not gripping me. I'm not fully engaged. I'm like, I don't know. Sometimes when you hear a lot about a movie, you would kind of expect it to hit the ground running, and it just really wasn't for me at first. That didn't last very long, thankfully, because pretty shortly in, I think I said 10 minutes. About 10 minutes in, I'm like, oh, okay, I can see why this. I can start to see some of the things that make this movie truly great. Some people, but it still wasn't this masterpiece that I'd always heard it was, or not always. Once I learned what it was, had heard it was, and that I kind of fully decided that I understood wherever it was coming from fairly soon in, when there is a 17-minute ballet scene that is one of the greatest scenes ever put to celluloid. It is a beautiful, it is a beautiful artistic poem of a ballet scene that a lesser movie would only include a small portion of it, or kind of only give you the beats that you absolutely need for the film, because there's a lot of parallels between the film and the ballet that they're doing in that scene. So they would only give you that, but they did not spare anything here. They showed the full 17 minutes ballet sequence, and as I mentioned, it's beautiful. It's incredibly well staged. It kind of made me want to go see a ballet, which is something that I can't say I've never wanted, but it's something that that is not often on my list of wants, to go watch some ballet. And I wanted to. I wanted to go see a ballet after after that sequence. And then what happens after that really kept me engaged, kept me in the film. It becomes this tragedy almost about life versus art, the things that you can't live without. And for Victoria Page, our protagonist, um, that's dance. But then that also becomes the love she finds in one of the other characters, and I'm going to let that unfold for people as it can. If you've never seen this, I highly recommend it. So I'm not going to go too far into that, but it becomes this, this struggle between the things that she loves and the things that she cannot live without, and it culminates in this moment that actually had me conflicted when I first was watching it. I was not sure. It felt kind of like a product of a bygone era, and maybe doesn't play so great in 2025. But the more I think about it, and the more I continue to dwell on this movie long after the credits had rolled, I realized that no, this was kind of a perfect ending. This culmination of everything that's happened comes to this one moment, and it's beautiful. So yeah, this movie, I've determined, you've heard it here, is a masterpiece. It's incredible. It's one that I definitely feel like I need to watch again. Like many of the movies that I've covered on this show that I've reviewed for 5225, I feel like a second watch is going to help me with some of the nuance, and not that I need much help because it's a masterpiece as is, but will help me have more touchstones to maybe speak about, and maybe that's something I can cover on after a future watch. But I'll just leave it here with this, and that is that the staging of the dancing, the incredible music and score, the masterful cinematography in stunning Technicolor, by the way, it's all absolute perfection, which is a word you're not going to hear from me very often when it comes to movies. Those things are in this film absolutely perfect, and they came together with the rest of the elements, and I think produced a masterpiece. Now, this movie, I know it was nominated for Best Picture in a controversial year because it's one of the upsets that happened that year, where Hamlet won over Treasure of Sierra Madre. Now, I know that the guys over at Picture This on the Dill Pickle Movie Network are going to be covering 1948 soon, because this is the year of the upsets for them. So I know they're going to be covering this one soon. So I really need to go watch the rest of the movies for this. I've seen a lot of Treasure of Sierra Madre, but not the whole thing. It could have been in this one for Blindspots. But I need to go fully watch that movie, fully watch Hamlet, fully watch all of the movies that were nominated that year, because it is hard for me to imagine why The Red Shoes is not considered the one that should have won after having seen it now. I'll report back maybe once I see that, or be on the lookout on the Dill Pickle Movie Network for the 1948 Picture This, and look in the comments, because I'm sure I'll have some things to say in there. But we're going to move on from Red Shoes for right now. As I said, I'll come back sometime and talk about it a little bit more once I've had a second watch and can have some better touchdowns to talk about. But we're going to move on to the next movie, which I mentioned before was an accident. I was actually watching this movie to prepare for just a movie coming out that just recently came out, and as I'm watching it, thinking I'm watching it as a rewatch, I realized about a third of the way in, I was like, oh my God, I think I never finished this movie the first time. But I always thought I had. And I'll just say right here, it's 28 Days Later from 2002, directed by Danny Boyle. Um, as many people know, as I've talked about on this show, I'm a Danny Boyle fan. I love his movies. I know not everybody is as jazzed about Danny Boyle as I am, but I just think he's a really great filmmaker. And I remember when this movie came out, and I remember watching it. But I also remember something that I had forgotten is I was in just a shitty mood that day, and I didn't see this in the theater. We actually saw it. I had brought it home to watch with my mom and girlfriend at the time, and I was just in a shitty mood that day, and so I guess about a third of the way through, I just kind of left the room and to go be by myself or something. I don't know. I was pretty angsty as a young adult. So I definitely left the room apparently at some point and never finished the movie. Now I believe I saw the ending of it as well. So once I got there, I was like, okay, I remember certain shots here. But I guess I had seen enough that I had always thought I had seen this movie. In fact, I saw 28 Weeks Later in the movie theater when it came out, and thinking that I just was watching the next movie or the sequel to a movie I'd already seen. So as I'm watching this movie, as I'm getting further and further into it, I'm realizing this is mostly a first watch, because the meat of this movie, the important bits of this movie, happen after that first third, happen in the last 2/3 of this movie. And so I have determined that this was considered a blind spot that I accidentally filled with while prepping for 28 Years Later, which just came out in theaters, which I have not seen yet, so I can't really review that yet either, or I can't review it at all yet. But I'm glad I've unwittingly filled this blind spot, because let me tell you, I loved this movie. I thought I had already loved it. And I think that was just the Danny Boyle lover in me who didn't remember not liking it, who had just had decided that I loved it, I guess. Because going back and watching it, oh man, there is so much life and humanity in a very, very bleak setting. And I know that is a kind of a staple of the zombie genre. And before anybody yells at me, it's a zombie movie. I know there's a lot of people who will argue with you about that. Yes, it's a rage virus. Yes, we can call them rage zombies if that helps, but they have all of the touchstones of a zombie, and this has all the touchstones of a zombie film. So we're going to call them zombies because they are. Their body gets taken over. They get turned with a bite. It's not something that could be fixed. They're zombies. Not to mention that their physiology changes a bit when they change. So anyway, I really love a found family movie, and that is what we get in this film for the last 2/3 of it. The first bit is definitely getting us into this world, and that's the idea that I had of this before, because I'd really only seen the beginning of it. And so now that I've gotten into it, it's really about a found family, and that's kind of been a staple for both of the movies that I have seen from this franchise. Is that they're kind of marketed as these for the setting, but they don't really market it for the story that's happening inside, which is always more focused on a small group of people, families, really. And this one happens to be a found family. And I know that I've heard, and I haven't seen 28 Years Later, and I've heard that some people are not enjoying it because the marketing led us to believe that it was one thing, but it actually ends up being more focused on the character aspects and the family aspects, which to that I say the other two were definitely like that as well. So I don't know what people were expecting, but I do think that most of the audience probably weren't around or aware when the marketing was happening for these other two movies. So I would say maybe they can be forgiven about that. But for me, that sounds on par. But again, haven't seen it, so I'll have to report back once I have seen it. but just this family kind of coming together, and there's some really good light moments. There's some scary survival-y moments. There is some tension in this movie that I haven't seen in a movie in a very long time. And sometimes when you look back on horror movies of old, some older horror movies, it's like, oh, well, I've seen this type of thing, or that kind of thing doesn't scare me anymore because it's so saturated. And I've seen a lot of zombie films, but there's some tension in this that I've never experienced in a zombie film. So I think that this movie absolutely maintains a watchability even here 23 years later, I guess. And I think that maybe some people have slept on it, like apparently I did, just because it's a very saturated market, zombie films, and especially because this movie starts out very similar to The Walking Dead. I will say that I think this movie covers, because a lot of the thematically, it's very similar to Walking Dead as well. I think 28 Days Later executes successfully what Walking Dead was trying to execute. I think that, and they start in a very similar way. A guy wakes up in a hospital, which you kind of have to turn off your brain on that to say, well, how did he survive so long in a hospital without food or water? I think in this one, they lead you to believe that somebody was probably taking care of him, because when he wakes up, there's the door's locked and there's a key under the door. Like somebody was probably coming back with some fluids and stuff for that. But you kind of have to suspend that disbelief. I know The Walking Dead also kind of explained that later after the fact, probably in in response to people going, wait, how did he survive that long without food or water? And you know, it is what it is. You just got to suspend that disbelief, so we can suspend that for the sake of this film as well, and just assume that because he's alive, somehow it happened, because we don't know for sure. But you know, there's also there's similarities between this and Walking Dead, which just came out long before Walking Dead did. Some of the similarities between those two is also like that. It focuses on these people who are trying to survive, and it kind of shows that, you know, the bigger fear in this world is not necessarily the zombies, it's the people with bad intentions. And I think that this actually executes that extremely well as well, because number one, I think that Walking Dead abandoned hope early on, and that is the trouble. That is the problem with that series for me. It's why I stopped watching. It's basically, it feels hopeless. You never get any glimpses of that you might have hope, and even if you did have hope, there are no people left to root for. Really, there are no people left that you want to rebuild a world, because the worst part of them has also come out, which is a fine storytelling technique, but it just doesn't work quite as well for me. For 28 Days Later, I always feel hopeful. This film constantly gives me hope. This film shows me that there are people left that I want to root for and that I want to continue on. And I want to, if we ever get past this, these are people that I want as part of my society, you know? So 28 Days Later works really well for me. Walking Dead is the one thing that is easy to compare it to. I've seen people compare it to other zombie stuff. I think it's so different that it's hard to really compare this to something like Train to Busan or the Living Dead movies and stuff like that. I think that they have very different goals, and so it's hard to really compare those. And really, why? Like, just take the movie for what it is, as it is coming, you know. So 20 Days Later, I loved it. If you haven't seen this series, I recommend it. The second one is also very good, but it's and especially watching the second one 28 weeks later, watching that in a post-pandemic world, seeing that no, this is a pandemic movie. 28 weeks later, and more so than 28 days later, it really changes the way that you see that movie. So if you haven't seen it in a while, revisit both of these because they are very good films, and I'm excited to watch 28 years later. But I'm going to leave that one there. And move on to the preview for next week, which it's the end of June, it's the end of Pride Month, and we're going to cover queer cinema. I wanted to. This was originally not on my list, but my friend Carly was like, "Hey, are you going to do anything for Pride in June?" And as a queer man, and she's a queer woman, and I was like, "Oh gosh, yeah." I when I made this list, I was not really thinking about always the months that they were in or what was being celebrated on a month level. It was more like, what is the celebration that's happening during this week? I didn't consider really the month of the things for the most part. Around Christmas, I considered the month of it. But for the most part, it was just what's happening during this week. So things like Pride Month being a month-long thing kind of slipped past. I was like, oh, shit, you're right. So I changed this one to queer cinema, and I'm going to have a guest. I'm going to have another guest. Last 2 weeks ago, I had my first guest on 5225, and I'm going to have a second guest. Carly's going to come on, and we're going to talk about some great queer movies. So, yeah, join us next week. Tell me in the comments, what are some blind spots that you have recently filled in with film? What are some movies that it's like, oh wow, I had never actually seen this, and finally I've gotten around to it after everybody's talked about it. What are some blind spots for you? Have you seen the movies I watched? What do you think about those? Tell me, what are some of your favorite queer movies? I'm talking lesbian, gay, bisexual, transgender, the whole alphabet, the LGBTQIA plus. What are some movies that focus on those themes that you love? Talk to me in the comments. Thanks.